Are you tired of all the nonsensical garbage being spread about the new Fallout series? I sure the hell am. I mean, the haters are making assumptions and complaints about things for which there is no real proof. What the hell, people? And don't give me that, well, they didn't give us an explanation, so we have to make one up for ourselves crap. The story isn't finished yet. If the Fallout series ends after Season 2, then right now, today, we only have 50% of the story. If it ends after Season 5, we only have 20% of the story. And if you feel that you can't wait and have to make up your own reasons about what's going on, then how about you make up some that are positive, instead of jumping to the worst case scenario and deciding that those are the only valid explanations. They are not. Now, I'm going to set all of this straight by examining the biggest complaints about the new Fallout TV series and how it supposedly retcons or ruins Fallout New Vegas. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And I'll provide you with some possible positive explanations and solutions to those perceived problems. Obviously, none of my annoyance is directed at the non-haters among you, but I hope y'all stick around anyways, have some fun, and hopefully learn some new ideas you haven't yet thought of. Enjoy the video. Now, I need those of you who hate Fallout Season 1 to take a deep breath, turn off the tribalistic caveman part of your brain. You know, the part that only cares about being right and doesn't give a shit about open-mindedness, reasonable doubt, or even common sense. Yeah, I need you to turn that part off. Seriously, take a breath, pause the video, and do it, or the rest of this is pointless. Okay, now we're going to examine the biggest complaints and fears about the Fallout series, apply some common sense, a touch of critical thinking, and by the end of the video, I will have hopefully convinced at least the reasonable among you that the show has ruined nothing. Oh, and if you stick around to the end, we'll talk about the one glaring screw-up in Fallout Season 1 that cannot be explained away, and what can be done about it. I've also read where some fans fear that the Fallout series will canonize a particular ending from Fallout New Vegas over the others. But I doubt that they will do this and make a particular New Vegas ending canon. I mean, Bethesda was once so strongly against making one of the Elder Scrolls Daggerfall's possible endings canon over the others that they invented the concept of frickin' dragon breaks to avoid it. And for those of you who understand what a dragon break is, that should be a powerful argument. And if you don't know what a dragon break is but want to, check the description of this video for an explainer video. Basically, it's a creative but quite absurd solution that allowed Bethesda to avoid canonizing one of Daggerfall's endings over the others. Anyways, it was a very long time ago that Bethesda did that, so I could easily be wrong about this. Bethesda could end up giving the green light to canonize a particular ending for Fallout New Vegas over the others, but if they do, is that really so bad? I don't think so. In fact, I would prefer to know what actually canonically happened after all I did in Fallout New Vegas. Especially now that we're back on the West Coast and in Fallout New Vegas' future. And for those of you who are all about Fallout timelines and lore, which seems to be many if not most of you, you should really want to know what happened. I mean, we need to know. After all, we can't have a Fallout timeline with such a major event left unexplained, can we? I mean, I guess we could, but I don't like it. So, to quickly recap, if New Vegas is destroyed in 2296, it does not ruin Fallout New Vegas, because those events occurred in 2281. And if a Fallout New Vegas ending is canonized, it's actually a good thing, because we need a definite resolution for an accurate Fallout timeline. And surely everyone agrees accurate timelines are important, right? Hey there, sorry for interrupting your video. I'm inserting this clip after this video is already finished because an IGN interview was just released in which Todd Howard directly states that the bomb which destroyed Shady Sands was indeed dropped after the events of New Vegas. Even though the next couple of chapters of this video are framed as trying to convince people that the Chalkboard timeline scene showing the destruction of Shady Sands in 2277 does not ruin or retcon anything, there is still good info here, and hopefully entertainment value, and at the very least, it shows how absolutely asinine the argument that Fallout New Vegas was retconned or ruined truly was even before this interview with Howard and Nolan was released. Thanks for your time, back to your video. That brings us to the hulking super mutant of a problem, the problem I've seen most commonly and most passionately argued by fans who think the show has ruined or even flat out retconned Fallout New Vegas. Yes, I'm talking about the already infamous timeline chalkboard scene. For those few who aren't aware, in episode 6, Lucy discovers a timeline of NCR events that ends with the destruction of Shady Sands. She finds this timeline in a classroom in Vault 4. Remember, it's a classroom. That is important. So, the issue here is that the timeline shows Shady Sands being destroyed in 2277, and the events of Fallout New Vegas occur in 2281. The reason some consider this to be an issue is that Shady Sands is the capital of the NCR, so some have decided this must mean that Fallout New Vegas is retconned or that the events of Fallout New Vegas don't make any sense, because there is no way the NCR could have kept a strong enough presence to hold the Hoover Dam after their capital was blown up, and that even if they did somehow manage to keep Caesar's legions at bay, then someone would have at least mentioned the destruction of Shady Sands in New Vegas instead of referring to it as though it still existed. Now, there are of course reasonable explanations for this. First, we're going to address these two issues directly, and then I have an indirect solution to present if you do not agree with the direct solutions. First, Fallout 2 was set in the year 2241, and the population of the NCR was 700,000 at that time. If Shady Sands was destroyed in 2277, that is 36 years later. It is highly likely that the population has dramatically increased from new births, immigration, and other factors. But for the sake of argument, let's just use the 700,000 number for the population of the NCR. Those 700,000 people are spread across most of California and parts of neighboring states. Shady Sands is only one city in that huge swath of land, and it had a population of 35,000 people when it was destroyed. 35,000 people is an objectively large number of people for a city in the post-apocalypse, but it is only 5% of our very conservative NCR population total. Losing that many people, and that much economic output, and so many leaders would surely be a huge blow to the NCR, but they still have 95%, or 665,000, of their people left. With such a large pool of people, they could surely replace their leaders, and the NCR nation would continue on. And again, the NCR as a whole would be significantly weakened, but that fact could actually help to explain why the NCR in Fallout New Vegas is so weak and spread so thin. Yes, the mighty military power that is the NCR is so weak in New Vegas that they have to rely on a complete stranger to complete important missions. That's kinda weird, right? I wonder if the destruction of a certain important NCR city could be a contributing factor to that. Yeah, but if they were so weakened, how did the NCR keep the Legion from taking Hoover Dam? Well, I'm glad you asked. Caesar's Legion also suffered a major calamity in 2277. They were routed by the NCR forces at the First Battle of Hoover Dam, and it took them years to regain their strength. So the destruction of Shady Sands could actually help to explain why Caesar's Legion even exists in 2281. Perhaps that's a reason why the NCR didn't reinforce and resupply in the Mojave, and then finish Caesar off while his forces were weakened. The destruction of Shady Sands also helps to explain why the NCR is so weak and spread so thin in 2281. I mean, their military forces are so weak in Fallout New Vegas that they have to rely on a mailman or woman who is a total stranger to complete important missions for them. That's kind of weird, isn't it? I wonder if the destruction of a certain important NCR city could be a reason for that. Now, as for no one in New Vegas mentioning the destruction of Shady Sands and there being a couple of instances of them referring to Shady Sands as though it were not destroyed, well, it isn't great. I admit it would have been better if some of the characters from New Vegas had mentioned the destruction of Shady Sands, or at least not have referred to it in ways that make it seem as though it still exists. But now it's time for some real talk. The reality of the situation is that these games, and now TV shows, are being made over decades of time by multiple studios, and they don't follow a series of books or comics that have already established the story that's being told. The stories of the Fallout games and TV series that are being made now, and that will be made in the future, were not known when New Vegas was made, so of course they couldn't mention or not mention everything that might be relevant in a Fallout project that releases 14 years later. Is any of what I'm saying making sense? Let me know down in the comments. And for those of you who reject that explanation, well, first I just want to say that you shouldn't reject it because you need to accept reality. But if you do reject that reason, then you can choose from any one of these other fine reasons for the Shady Sands destruction not having been mentioned in New Vegas. The NCR doesn't want to remind outsiders or their enemies of how weak they really are in the Mojave. Or they don't want to talk about such a traumatic event with a stranger. Or their leaders ordered silence on the issue to prevent it from draining morale. Or maybe, just maybe, you never happened to be around when it was mentioned. Take your pick. Now I know, somebody out there is still whining because that doesn't explain the few lines of dialogue referring to Shady Sands as though it still exists. Fine. These are for you. Maybe the NCR leaders now rule from some hidden bunker that has been named Shady Sands as a tribute to the lost city. Or maybe the new capital was renamed Shady Sands. Or maybe Shady Sands was simply rebuilt in another location. It's not like it would be the first destroyed city in human history to be rebuilt. Now, on to what I believe we will discover in Season 2 to be the real reason that Shady Sands was shown to have been destroyed in 2277. Which of course is that it wasn't. Wait, don't go. I know I'm being completely ridiculous. I mean, look at that right there, Chris. It clearly shows Shady Sands was destroyed in 2277. I'm sure all of you are tired of people's weak-ass attempts to argue that this means something else. Well, buckle up, because I actually have two entirely sound arguments prepared for you, neither of which is weak, and all they require from you is an open mind. So make sure you have that caveman part of your brain still turned off. You remember that part, right? Is it off? Well, I hope so, because here we go. Look at this right here. I mean, if you look right here, the timeline literally continues with an arrow pointing to an atomic explosion, implying that the blast could have come sometime after 2277. Now, I know that probably doesn't convince you, but that's because you've already made up your mind and you aren't really looking at it, or thinking about it, or even listening to me. I said the blast could have happened sometime after 2277, not that it definitely did. So please really look at it and consider. Ask yourself, is it really 100% clear that Shady Sands was destroyed in 2277? If so, then why continue the line of the timeline and end it with an explosion? Why not simply draw the explosion next to the fall of Shady Sands without the line of the timeline continuing onwards to the explosion? Is it really 100% clear? Come on, be honest. Or if while keeping an open mind, you can admit there is a 10% chance the blast came after 2277, or a 5% chance, or at least a 1% chance. I mean, come on, look at that and really think. It has to be at least 1% unclear. Don't like that explanation? Fine. Then let's just take a moment to talk about the unreliable narrator principle. This principle is based on the fact that all stories and histories are created, remembered, recorded, and interpreted by people. People have agendas, people have biases, and they have bad memories. So basically, you cannot know for certain what you've been told, or what you've been taught, or what you've read to be true. There are examples of this being the case throughout human history. And even in modern day America, there are tens of millions of people, or probably even more, probably a lot more, who believe, whether correctly or incorrectly, they believe that the wrong version of American history is being taught in certain classrooms even today. Yes, classrooms similar to the one in which Lucy finds this timeline on a chalkboard. Oh, and in case you're unaware, Bethesda has often made use of the unreliable narrator principle to explain things in the Elder Scrolls timeline. So, it's kinda their thing. With all of that considered, is it possible that in a post-apocalyptic dystopia, when recounting the most traumatic event the people of Vault 4 have ever experienced, that they might have some agenda or bias or other reason to teach an incorrect history, either intentionally or unintentionally? Is it possible? Before you answer, remember we're talking about these people who have created a cult and performed this cultic ritual that involves spreading the ashes of their dead over their faces, stripping down half naked, and drinking blood to, and I quote,
Bring back the past as we remember. We bring back Shady Sands as we remember. We bring back...
Come on, maybe, just maybe, there is a chance that these people are unreliable narrators and are teaching an inaccurate history. A chance, maybe. And even if you hate the unreliable narrator principle, Bethesda will use it anyways. And these people and this situation is absolutely perfect for it. So even if it wasn't their original intent, if they don't have another explanation for this, you can bet your ass that the unreliable narrator principle will be their explanation. Hopefully, with these considerations and your open-mindedness, you're now thinking something like, fine, Chris, given the unreliable narrator principle and the crazy cultishness of those in question, I guess there is a chance, a small chance, that Shady Sands was not actually destroyed in 2277. And to that thought I say, good job. You are making progress, you are growing as a person. I truly appreciate your open-mindedness. Next up, I'm going to throw the haters a few bones. First up, we have the Vials. You know, the ones that contain a kiln that prevents ghouls from becoming feral? They did annoy me a bit, especially at first. Like many of you, I was wondering why we had never seen ghouls with these vials before if they were needed to prevent them from becoming feral. But after a bit, I quickly realized we just don't have enough information and that explanations will likely be given in the coming seasons. I mean, we don't even know if all ghouls need to take this kiln, or if it's just certain ghouls who need it, and we don't know where it came from, or more importantly, when. Let me just say that it better turn out that the kiln was only recently discovered or some other equally plausible explanation, otherwise I will be upset about this one. Hopefully we get some answers on this in Season 2. So, travel time is another issue I've seen mentioned. You know, complaints that traveling a certain distance would take longer than it seems to in the show, and I gotta say, I think this is just a case of people looking for anything to complain about to further their point that the show sucks because of some imagined slight. To be fair, on the one hand, people complaining about this are technically correct. It is highly unlikely that characters are traveling such long distances under such harsh conditions in such short amounts of time, and all on foot. But on the other hand, come on. The entire season is only 8 hours long, give or take a bit, so they don't have the time to include all of that travel time, and if they did, people would complain about the pacing of the show. You have to consider the medium and realize that complete and total realism has to be sacrificed to some extent. Now, I do realize some of you may have only had an issue with the travel time as it pertains to our final topic, and if that is you, well then, your travel time complaints are forgiven. On to the final topic, the one where the haters get to bash me and say I told you so, this show sucks. And yes, it is of course the location of Shady Sands. In the Fallout series, Shady Sands, or the crater that used to be Shady Sands, is located in or adjacent to either the remnants of Los Angeles or the remnants of some other major pre-war city. This is actually a legitimate problem because Shady Sands is supposed to have been built from the ground up east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range and away from any major pre-war cities. There are only two explanations I can see for this location in the show. Either Bethesda is going to retcon Shady Sands from its previous location, or someone is going to have to admit a mistake and the location of Shady Sands in the Fallout series will have to be declared non-canon. I mean, they could use the unreliable narrator principle, I guess, but even I think that would be incredibly weak, given that we have seen Shady Sands and its location with our own eyes and in our own playthroughs. So, if this is a simple mistake, then they'll let it be known, and one mistake, as the show relates to the Fallout games in a season where their adherence to the lore was surprisingly accurate, can and should be forgiven in my opinion. I mean, this is a Bethesda product after all. We have to use our own headcanon every time Bethesda releases a game to make sense of inconsistencies. I think we can do that for this one mistake in the show.